I've heard that the best amount to aim to grow by week after week is 4%.
Your permission is like to raise your standards
4%
and
might
live
not seem like a lot,
life.
but over
really
time,
hit the jackpot
4%.
by most of the world's standards, even though most of you think it's still not enough. What's going to make things magnificent on your terms, not somebody else's terms?
But if you're on an awakening journey and you have recognized that those are there, you have taken the most crucial step to get out of that, which is to become aware that it's actually happening.
This is your last chance. You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
And welcome to the Joygasmic Life podcast. If you're new here, welcome. I'm so glad that you found your way here and you're in for a treat, because here we are sharing the top tips, hacks, and tools that our community of conscious women mothers have found to really work to make a difference in how they parent and how they can keep their calm and cool even when their kids are driving them crazy. Each week, I interview guests who are bulletproof moms, badass women running their own businesses on the leading edge of consciousness, who are here to support people in getting the skills, knowledge, and tools they need to put into practice what it is to walk their talk and be conscious spiritual women in the world. Our topics range from optimal nutrition to mindset hacks to tantra and everything in between. If there's a topic or an expert you'd like to see interviewed, drop me a line on my Facebook page, and I'm happy to see if we can arrange that. Remember, if you love the podcast, there's so much more on our website, bulletproofmoms.com, and we would so appreciate that you subscribe, share our podcast with your friends, and give us a 5-star rating on iTunes or wherever you're viewing this, as it helps us reach more people. Remember, if we talk too slow, you can always speed us up. I know I love to do that, and without further ado, here is our next guest.
Awesome. So welcome to the Joygasmic Life podcast. Our guest today is Nola Peacock, who is an intuitive parenting coach, facilitator, author, and speaker. Through her 40 years of experience with kids, working as a pediatric oncology nurse, coach, teacher, and mom of 2 highly sensitive kids, Nola has learned some of the most effective ways to ensure kids are self-motivated, responsible, and resilient. Knowing that kids' confidence levels often plummet around age 9, Nola is passionate about empowering kids to believe in their worth, be proud of their unique gifts, and feel confident to be true to themselves. Nola loves teaching parents how to look beneath their child's behavior and figure out the real issues so that lasting changes can occur. Nola teaches parents to guide their children to develop important life skills like decision-making in order that they become confident, empowered, and successful young adults. I'm so excited to have this conversation with you today, Nola. Mental health in young people and teenagers is something that I'm super passionate about and something that was a really big part of my personal story. And so I'm really excited to get to hear more about how you support parents in doing that. Let's just start with, like, how did you get into this particular corner of the world? Like, obviously you've had a lot of experience working with kids over a long career doing that, but how did this particular piece come about?
Well, I think what launched me into this was when my own son, when he was about 15, 16, was struggling with depression. And he just, slowly stopped doing the things that he enjoyed, like playing lacrosse and spending time with friends. He was actually hunkered down in the basement playing video games a lot. And then he eventually actually quit going to school. And of course, he was in high school, and that's a big deal, right? And he was seeing a psychologist at that time because it was, not long after my divorce. And his dad had been emotionally and verbally abusive. And so, I think there was a lot of things that my son was having to deal with. And one day I just, it just seemed to be getting worse. And I sat down with him and I said, are you thinking of ending your life? And he said, yes. Wow. And then I asked him if he had a plan. And he said yes.
Wow.
And I was just like, like, what do I do? We actually I called the crisis team, and someone came to our house to visit him. And, I'm sure that most of the time that's probably really effective, but it was not a good fit. And so when he left, I was still like, I mean, his comment to me when he left was, I don't think you need to take your son to the hospital, but just make sure you lock up all your sharp knives. So,
Oh my God.
I was not, reassured at all, right? And it's like, what do I do? And then we were out for dinner, and it was actually my birthday dinner. And one of our friends, an older woman, right, was started to give my son heck about not going to school. And I was sitting across from my son, and I saw the look of devastation in his face. And I think something inside me just snapped. And I thought, how dare you judge my son? You don't know what it was like for him as he was growing up. And I knew that he had things, he needed to heal emotionally. And so I thought, that's it. Like, I need to start trusting, my intuition. Instead of listening to everybody else and focusing on trying to get him back to school, I need to find a way to help him to know that, how worthwhile he is, because he really didn't feel like he mattered to his dad. And so, together, like, I started really listening to him and helping him to kind of find things that worked for him. And, one of the most powerful things for him was music, both listening to it, but also playing a guitar. So I bought him a new guitar. I found a teacher that would come to our house, and then he composed songs, and he wrote lyrics and used that as a way to work through his emotions. And then, slowly he started kind of coming back to life. And, so he taught me so much about, that we really need to trust and like have a lot of tools and find what's really going to work for us, in the moment. And he also taught me the other, huge lesson is that there's always an answer. So we tried all kinds of things, private school, tutor, online school, different things. And he couldn't finish high school. And for a long time, I wouldn't even tell anybody. I was so ashamed, right? I felt so guilty that, what a terrible mom am I here. I've got a high school dropout. And yet he wound up going to university as a mature student, and he got a business degree. Yeah. And now, like, he's so happy. He lives, life full out. He's got an amazing job, and, bought himself a place. And, it's just like, I'm so proud of him. And he just taught me that there's always an answer. And so, when I would hear my friends talk about their or, like I've taught piano for years and years, and, kids would tell me, like, what they were going through. And, and I had friends telling me about their kids that were, 9 years old and cutting, right? And I'm just like, no, like, kids need to have life skills so that they can handle, the emotions and, and whatever life throws them. So that was what, sparked me to create, some programs and to be able to help kids, because, there is always an answer. And I just, look at kids, and they, to me, they're so amazing. They have so much to offer the world. And, maybe they don't quite fit into what society, says that they should, and doing things the way that, we sometimes think they should, but they are all a gift. And I want them to know that. I want them to know that, and to know that there's always a way, that they don't have to always do it the way society tells them. And just, share their joy and all the gifts with us. So,
Wow. Oh my gosh, what a story. And I just want to acknowledge, like, you straight out asked him, are you thinking about ending your life? And that seems like, I think, a really terrifying question as a parent to ask your kid. And having been one of those teenagers who really struggled with suicidal ideation and with spending, better part of a decade in that, I'm just like, oh my God, like, I wish somebody would have asked me that. Like, I wish that my parents would have been like, are you okay? Like, how okay are you? Are you, like, feeling kind of sad okay? Are you, like, thinking about hurting yourself okay? And maybe we can just take a moment. That's, like, really grippy for me. It's like, can we just take a moment and and go through, like, what does it take as a parent to have the courage to ask your kid that? And what are some of the possible responses and how would you handle that?
Well, I think, for me, I think part of it was my nursing background, right? So I kind of knew that that was something to ask. But you're right. I mean, as a parent, I was terrified. I didn't want to hear that he was thinking of ending his life. And certainly, not that he had a plan. But I also knew that I needed to know, because I didn't want him to go and do something, right? And, and for me to regret not asking that question. And I think a lot of times parents are afraid to ask those tough questions because they worry that they're going to put those thoughts into their child's head. And, I'm here to say, like they probably are already thinking it. And if they're not, they'll just flat out say, no, I'm not, right? But if if they are and nobody asks, I mean, the consequence of not asking can be horrendous, right? Losing your child, what is worse than that? So I think it really is important to ask those tough questions. And I think, as you said, like, I wish that my parents had asked, right? I think it's a relief to be able to tell somebody, oh, yeah, I'm really struggling right now. And when kids are feeling suicidal, I know, like, I hear, people say, oh, they're trying to get attention. And no, they are crying out for help. They don't know what else to do.
Yeah.
To move through it, right? And they don't have all of the, the life skills and the resources like we do as adults.
Yeah.
And so, sometimes they think there's no other way out, right? And so if you can ask them that tough question, and, are you thinking of ending your life, right? And the reason that I asked about a plan is, often kids have that, suicidal thoughts, and they're like, oh, I wish I wasn't here. But it's a whole other thing when they start putting a plan together. Like, that's when you need to call in and get some help, and whether it's taking them to the hospital or whatever, but that's very alarming if they've got a plan.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, wow.
if you don't ask, you won't know. Right. And I just, again, just recently I have a friend whose, 20-year-old son committed suicide, and it breaks my heart. It's like, it shouldn't have to be like that, right? We need to speak up, ask those tough questions, and help give our kids, the resources they need. Mm-hmm.
Obviously that's not someplace that any parent ever wants to end up. So if that doesn't seem to be on the radar and your kids are sort of under 10, you mentioned that after 9, self-esteem seems to just plummet. Is there a reason for that? Do you know why that is?
Well, around that age, they start paying more attention to their peers and to other people, and they start that comparison, right? When kids are really young, it's all about me, right? They don't they don't care about anybody else, really. But as they, about around 9, they really start to notice. And so, especially when they're at school or in their different, activities, they're looking around and they're going, oh, wow, he got, a higher mark in math than me. And she did this better than me. And right. And it, it might be that one thing that their friend does better than they do. But because they're comparing with so many, of their peers, and then they're going, oh, I can't do that. I can't do that. I can't do that. And so, yeah, that's when their their self-worth, their confidence can really plummet. Right. So,
yeah, that makes sense to me, because before that, like 7 and under, they're just sort of focused on themselves and their own life. Yeah. So what are some of the things that parents can do to bring more connection in, to have those conversations, like to create more connection or support their kids?
Well, one of the biggest things that I teach parents to do is to really listen to their kids. And I call it active holistic listening. And what I mean by that active is it takes energy and focus. Like, you really need to, to forget your to-do list and all of that, and just really focus on your child and what they're saying to you, but also what they're not saying to you. Right. And so really, like, listening to their words, watching, body language, and then trusting your gut, like trusting that intuition and going, like, yeah, maybe they're telling me that everything is fine, but I just sense, some sadness here or some worry or something, and really trusting that and checking in with your kids and going, you were telling me that you had a really great day today, but I just feel like something's off, right? And they may, if they're not used to their parents listening to them at first, it may take some time to really strengthen that bond so that they feel comfortable enough to open up to their parents. But asking those tough questions, checking in, like, like, I'm feeling this or I'm sensing this, and what about that? And the other part about it too is not jumping in to fix things for kids right away, or asking a bunch of questions, right? Like silence, I think, is golden, right? If they're talking and they pause and you keep your mouth shut, right? They'll feel, it's like us, right? We want to fill the space, and that's often they'll start, and that's often when those little gems come, and they'll go, oh, well, right. And they'll tell you something about what's going on, or, about being bullied or things like that. And then the other big part, I think, is not judging. And that can be so difficult, right, for most of us. And not just, your kids or their behavior or what they're telling you, but I mean, if they might be telling you about one of their friends, or, maybe they got into an argument at school and their friend did something that, maybe was inappropriate. But as soon as you start to judge that, the kids will shut down. They won't talk. And because they'll be worried that if they make a mistake, oh, mom's gonna judge me, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that shuts down communication. So being just, open and listening, and then you can say, well, what do you think about that? Or how do you feel about that? Right? Your friend did this, and, whatever. And what do you think? Right?
Mm-hmm.
And that allows that, communication to flow, and for them to feel that they can come to you with anything, right? If they're worried about being judged, or you are getting into trouble, or, whatever, they're not going to come and talk to you. And I think that's, looking at the big picture, that's what we want, is for our kids to be able to come to us with anything, right? Not to be going to their peers, or feeling like, they can't be here anymore and wanting to end their life because they don't know, they don't feel that they've got any support. So yeah. So I think that's one of the biggest things, is just really, really listening. And then also, talking about things like self-talk, right? I think that's a big thing. And I'm always, I mean, I shouldn't be, because I hear it so often, but I still, it's like, what kids will say to themselves. Like, I was teaching mindfulness classes, and this one 6-year-old, he had a friend in the class, and he went and was trying to be helpful, but so he drew something on his friend's poster, and his friend got upset with him. And so he just, he got up and went across the room and plunked himself down on the floor, and then just went, oh, I'm so stupid, I'm always messing things up, I hate myself. And he's 6 years old, and I'm like, oh my goodness, right? So then we got the group together, and we talked about that, and what is it that we're saying to ourselves, and would you say that to your friend? And they're like, no. It's like, okay, then you shouldn't be saying it to yourself either, right? And then helping them to turn it around, right? And so instead of like, I can't do this, it's like, I can do this with some help, right? Maybe, right? And finding those solutions and helping them to pivot and change those things around so that they're not so hard on themselves. And then the other part is for us as parents, like, we need to be careful what we're saying, right? Like, one of my clients, she came in, her mom called me and said that she had been, trying to put on a skirt, and it was kind of tight. So she'd commented about being overweight or fat or something. And her daughter said to her, Mom, Nola says we have to talk nicely to ourselves. Like, okay, good. I got through, right? But it's like, we need to be careful. Like, what example are we setting? And if we're hard on ourselves and making those kind of comments, right? of course our kids are going to do it. So
yeah, I mean, and then there's things, I see patterns in parents where, you know, old phrases that maybe they heard from their parents just slip out in moments of frustration and anger. It's just like, you're never good at it. You're never going to do it. You're never good at anything. You'll never amount to much. Like whatever those are, right? There's these sort of older phrases that just whoop, and come right out, especially when we're in heated moments. And I think being able to apologize for like our misbehaviors as parents, like knocking the thing over just now, sorry. It's like being able to apologize allows us to know that we're human, that it's okay to make mistakes. I know that in the past I used to really struggle with my anger in relation to Alex, especially when he was like 4, 5, 6, 7, and I was like, you should be old enough to be able to like handle whatever's going on right now, and like I'm angry because you're not handling it well. And being able to go, oh, I'm like later go, oh, I'm sorry, like my emotions got out of hand and I'm sorry for that. That gives a lot more, oh, we're all human. Your emotions get out of hand. My emotions get out of hand. We apologize and we sort of respect each other. And that goes a long way for creating more of a back and forth relationship. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and I mean, you bring up another really good point about admitting that we make mistakes, right? And that it's okay. Because that's something, you know, so many kids struggle with. So they mess up, right? And then they're feeling like they're a failure, or they don't know how to get past it. You know, or they're going to get into trouble or whatever it is. But it's like to teach them that it is okay, right? Like we all make mistakes. I don't know anyone who hasn't, right? And so, and it's how do we move past those mistakes, right? So whether we need to go and apologize to somebody, or we need to go and, you know, I mean, spilt milk or whatever, oh, we're just going to, you know, we're going to wipe it up, or it's how we respond to those things and letting kids know that it is okay, right? Everybody makes mistakes, and how can we, you know, how can we fix it now? And that's, you know, a critical life skill that kids need to learn is, you know, how to bounce back from things. And if things, you know, mess up, and they get practice on, you know, like, oh, maybe they didn't study for a test and they go and they bombed, right? And so rather than going and saying to your kids, I told you you should have, you know, studied more. It's like, they already know that, right? And it's like, so they come home with the mark and so you got a, you know, a C or D, whatever. You know, what do you think about that, right? How do you feel? And it's like, oh, well, I should have studied more, I guess next time. And then helping them come up with a plan. Like, maybe, okay, so you've got another exam on this date. What do you think you can do? Like, you right, and helping them maybe break it down into bits, and okay, well, these days that, you know, they're going to study, and giving, like, putting that responsibility, that ownership on them, so that, you know, they learn to plan out those things, right, and to work past the things. And that way, when they get to be a young adult, right, if something like losing their job, or, you know, a big thing, it's like, okay, I've got the skills, you know, yes, maybe this is really tough right now, and I've got the skills, I know how I can move past this. So it really boosts their resilience when they have those opportunities from very young, you know, right through to practice. Like, oh, I messed up. What am I going to do? Right? Rather than just kind of curling up in a ball and going, I failed. I can't do anything.
Yeah. So that's a great example around school. What about sort of power struggles around like food or eating or chores at home? Like, how would you recommend handling those sort of power struggles?
Okay. Yeah, that's a big thing, and I work with parents with that. I think one of the most helpful things is giving kids choices, right? I mean, I always ask when I work with kids, I say, do you like being told what to do? And I've yet to find a kid that says yes. Right? And I mean, it's the same for us as adults, right? Nobody likes being told what to do. And so, you know, that's why I say put the responsibility, you know, back on the kids. So, and one of the things that kids want more of, that they tell me they want more of, is one-on-one time with their parents. So you can kind of use that as a, as a bribe, if you want to call it that.
Mm-hmm.
So for example, like I've had kids where they, like one young girl, she was having stomach aches and the doctors couldn't find anything wrong. So I had her kind of listen to her own body. And she said, she wanted more time with her mom. And I'm like, okay. And so, I mean, there were 4 kids in the family. So mom's busy, right? She's got lots of stuff to do.
Yeah.
So I said, well, if you want to have more time with your mom, what could you do to help your mom so that she could free up some extra time to spend with you?
Mm.
So great incentive, right? And so kids, I mean, it's amazing what kids will say. Oh, I'll unload the dishwasher, or I'll do this, I'll do that. I'm like, okay. And then you help them, right? Because whenever they're going to change a habit, it's like you and I, right? It takes some time, and we've got to set ourselves up for success. So it's helping them to set up for success. So it's like, okay, so you're going to, or we'll set the table, right? How are you going to remember to do that, right? Do you want me to remind you once? Or do you want to put a sticky note or a reminder in your phone? Or what are you going to do, right, so that you can get this done? And then if it doesn't happen, what should we do about that, right? And I mean, it's amazing. Like, so I've had kids, like, they make charts, or they'll use sticky notes or whatever, but they find ways because they want to be successful. And then it can be, okay, well, if you've, as long as you've set the table, and sometimes they're going to mess up, right? Because we all do. But let's say, 4 out of 5 nights during the week or something that they've set the table. It's like, okay, if you can do that, then on the weekend, you and mom or dad, you can go and do, whatever, right? And have that time together. And I mean, it's amazing what kids will do. And I've had, them turn around like in a week, and they're like, parents are like, oh my goodness, like, the whole family is happier because there's not those constant power struggles, right? And with food, I mean, we cannot force our kids to eat, right? So it can be, well, here's your choices, and helping them to, to kind of help, and maybe planning meals or cooking, depending on their age, but they can be a big part of, of the meals. And if it's, that they're into junk food, I mean, don't have it in the house, just like us, right? Like, if it's sitting there, it's tempting, and we, a lot of us want, that stuff that's not so great for us.
Junk food, it's just not buy it. Straight up. Super easy.
Right?
You just don't
right?
buy it.
And so here are your choices. And I mean, they're not going to starve themselves. They will eat, right? But, and also give them choices, and remember that they have, their taste buds are way more sensitive than us. So, if they really don't like something, like, whatever, there's lots of other choices, I think, right? And, if they've got, I mean, maybe there's a few, 2 or 3, choices of fruit that they can pick, or vegetables or whatever, and just not letting them fill up with junk. Don't have it there. It's like, it's not that tough. But, and also just having them, planning meals, and you can make it, fun. Like I know lots of kids, and I remember doing this as a kid, like, writing up a menu and planning it, and giving my parents, here's the menu, and you can pick these things, and then I would serve the food, and so you can make it fun and get them to to help out, right? And
we play a really sweet restaurant game where a couple times a week Alex is the waiter and brings all the food out to us and takes our orders and brings it out. He goes to the bathroom, comes back as the waiter. It's like, here you go. And then like goes back to the restaurant and comes back as the Alex version. He's like, oh, I had my good bathroom break. And you're like, oh, he's so funny. And I think bringing that playfulness and that fun into it is a really great way of engaging with them too, because kids, especially like under 10, they're still really driven by play, really driven by imagination and adventure. And so if you can bring that into any sort of situation where you're needing something different, that's a good way of doing it.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, that's true, like the playfulness, and also for us too, right? And sometimes, like, maybe on a Friday night, like, say, you know what, let's have dessert first, right? It's like, and they'll probably look at you like, have you lost your mind, right? Because you've never done that. but they will remember that. And that's, that's something else that I think is so important, because I mean, I have two, adult children now, and I can tell you the time went by so quickly, right? And I am so grateful for all of those special memories of crazy things that, that we would do sometimes. That was, I mean, having a picnic in the middle of the living room when the, weather was bad, throwing a blanket down and having all the stuffed animals and us sitting on the floor, whatever. I remember those things, and my kids still talk about them, right? So it's like, yeah, do something unexpected once in a while, right? And that, that gets the kids too playing in, and right, and doing things. Or, once a week you get to plan the menu, and and maybe it's, a bit crazy, but, you can go with it. And I think too, sometimes that can, being playful really can shut down power struggles. Like one day, this was a few years ago, but my daughter was, in a real cranky mood one morning, and I was like, oh boy, like, what am I going to do? And I had a package of gummy candy. It was actually, they were Angry Birds. And I opened them up and I started throwing them at her. And she just kind of looked at me like, what are you doing? But she started to laugh. And right away, right, it turned her mood around. And then, I mean, we had a beautiful morning rather than, the way it could have gone.
Yeah.
But yeah, so sometimes just, doing something unexpected, being playful with your kids, and, and they'll buy into that and go, oh, yeah, okay, I don't mind helping in the kitchen, right? But it's so much better than, sometimes I hear parents, and it's like, here's your chore and do this, and if you don't do it, you're, and it's just like, well, then who would want to do it when you're being like that, right? Like, I don't blame them for not wanting to help, but when you can make it, kind of fun, and this is just part of being in our family, we all work together, and, make it fun, and put on music, and, let's put on some fuzzy socks on our hands and dust the furniture or whatever, right? I mean, they can, we can just,
I like it.
Make it big. I mean, and it makes it fun for us too, because I think sometimes as parents, I get it. It's hard work, and 24/7. But if we can, lighten up, sometimes it helps everybody, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, one of my favorite power struggle like flips where playfulness is involved would be like, hurry up, let's keep walking, sort of like kid dawdle, like Alex will dawdle. We're walking somewhere, we have some time, we need to have a specific time we need to get there or not, but after the fourth, okay, I'm just gonna stop and look at this little thing, you're like, oh my god, like, stop looking at the little things and just walk like an adult, and that turned around when I was like, oh, let's just race. Like, I could get him to go from not walking and or walking backwards just to like spite me by being like, I'll beat you to the thing. And he's like, okay. And then all of a sudden we're like collaboratively moving probably about 4 times faster than we would have been towards the thing. And then later on, I figured out, I was like, Alex, I have an astral double. It's like my soul spirit thing, and it will race you because I don't feel like racing right now. Then he'll run with like my imaginary self to the thing, and I'll haul. Like, this is like if I was talking with a friend or whatever, I'd just be like, I don't want to race right now. Like, I want to talk and walk with my friend while we're walking, and I'd be like, I'm beating you. Oh no, you pulled ahead, But like, not having to do all the running. Oh my gosh, that was like a major breakthrough point for me. It was so good,
right?
And he loves it,
Yeah.
Sometimes we'll walk together and be like, both our astral doubles are running and racing each other. And you're like, great. He always wins.
Of course. Yeah, it makes it fun, right? And then you'll always have those special memories about, right? Yeah. Rather than, oh, remember when mom used to yell at me, or right, or whatever. It's like, you'll remember those times.
Those positive memories are super important. I think a lot of what you've shared so far today is really around like using, like helping your kids be positively motivated. So like moving towards things they like the example you gave of the little girl who wanted to spend more time with her mom. It's just like, what do you want? How can we get you more of what you want? Versus, if you don't do this, you're in big trouble, missy. Which a lot of kids, unfortunately, through school, they do get that messaging. They do get like, do this or you'll be punished, or be on time or whatever, do your homework or you'll fail your class, whatever that might be. And so creating a home environment where that negative reinforcement isn't there so much, more a positive reinforcement of, when you do the things you say you do, you will get these sort of rewards. That's that can be really, really positive.
Yeah. And then it gives them a buffer against what's happening at school or in other environments, right? Because they've got that safety at home. And then, another thing that I think too is really important for parents is to take care of yourself first, right? That oxygen mask, right? Put that on yourself first. So make sure that you're taking time to do things that you want to do, right? And nurturing yourself. When, I used to think, oh no, like I'm this mom. And I mean, a big part of it was, I had lost a baby and then had 2 miscarriages, and then was finally blessed with my daughter. And so, I'd kind of made this deal, like if I am blessed with another baby, I will be the perfect parent, right? So then it was like, well, I'm not going to do anything for myself. And I remember hearing another mom saying that she was going to go to the spa. Well, the dad looked after her baby, and I was kind of like, oh my goodness, she's so selfish, right? I mean, and I'm like, now I think, oh my goodness, like she was so smart. Because if we're not taking care of ourselves, we get where we're exhausted and we're resentful, and that's when we're lashing out, and we can't be playful and make things easier, and that's when we're going, come around, right? It's like, what, that isn't any fun for anybody in the family. So it's important. And I remember working with a young girl, and I gave both her parents an assignment. They had to do one thing that week for themselves, right? And it wasn't a big thing. I think the mom had a lovely bubble bath with candles and soft music or whatever. But it was so cute, because when the daughter came to see me the following week, she commented, and I hadn't told her, right, about this homework for her parents, but she came and she said, my mom and dad were a lot happier this week. I'm like, so, it's like they pick, right? Because they feel our energy. And if we're miserable and not taking care of ourselves, they know it, and it just makes it harder for kids. So it really is, a gift for your kids as well when you do things that, take care. And I think especially right now when we're having to, social distance and all of that, and kids, in a lot of places are at home, right? They're not going to school. So it's important for parents, especially now, to go, okay, I'm going to take, a bit and go and have a bath, or I'm going to, get on the phone with a friend because I need to, chat. And
we need to have some adult conversations on something like that. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Mom needs some time. And, and if that means, that they're, your kids sit and have some screen time or whatever, so that you can get that, I think right now that it is okay. Like, I think we need to relax on our rules sometimes when things are tough, right? So, and then, and then you've, once you've filled yourself up, it's like, okay, now let's, and we can, maybe do something fun together again, right?
Yeah.
Mom's had her time.
I talk about like lowering your standards and then raising your standards. So it's like, when you're exhausted, it's okay to lower your standards a little bit. It's just like, make sure that when you're taking care of yourself during that time where you're going like, okay, well, we're going to do a little bit more screen time today than normal, just so that I can have the hour in the bubble bath or whatever it is, right? That then when you come back full of energy again, it's like, okay, well, then let's bring that energy to the situation. Let's use that to create new habits, to create different ways of being, instead of using that extra energy to have a power struggle, for example, using it to create a better system, using it to create a better habit for the family, using it to have those conversations where we're reworking things. Yeah. Yeah. Do you have any specific tips for, it's March, just the end of March 2020 right now as we're recording this. So, and it'll air in the next week or so. Do you have any tips for people who are in quarantine with their children right now, maybe going a little bit crazy, trying to balance their work and their homeschooling all of a sudden and their kids and all that?
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things is just relaxing about things, especially schoolwork. I'm not saying like, don't do it, but I think, there's all kinds of ways that kids can learn. Yes, their schoolwork, but like I said, I mean, they could, if they're planning a menu, right, or following a recipe. I mean, they're, you can get them to calculate measurements, right? Like how much is half a cup and a third a cup, right? Or things like that. You can make it a little bit more playful. Yeah, not being so hard on yourself. And then, checking out, like I know on the Confident Happy Kids Facebook page, I've been trying to share all kinds of things, activities for parents and kids to do. And, there's all kinds of like online art classes and yoga classes. And my daughter, I mean, she teaches dance. She's doing online dance classes. So there's lots of different things. So I think, find that new norm for now, right? Like look at okay, how can we make this work? And right. And, crafts. And I think, maybe getting your kids to focus on doing something nice for somebody else. I mean, that lifts, can lift everybody up. Like, for example, like in our neighborhood, parents organized a scavenger hunt and they asked people to, participate. So I don't have little kids, but I thought, sure, I'm happy to do that. So our house got Harry Potter. And so, we came up with some things to put in our windows, right, for Harry Potter. And then as the kids are walking around the neighborhood, they I guess, figure out these clues and go, oh, right, this Harry Potter. And so, things like that, like, or even, asking your kids, what do you think we could do for somebody? And I mean, that's the other thing. We don't always have to come up with the ideas. When we ask our kids, like, what do you think? They have such great ideas, right? It's like, what do so get them involved in helping you plan. And, the other thing is if you've got work to do and, say, look, mommy has, I need an hour to get some stuff done. What do you guys think you could do, right? Can you, and work together. And then you could say, when I'm done that hour, how about if we, we could, I don't know, like, blow bubbles, or we can do a craft, or we, right? Something that they want to do. We could bake some brownies, or, whatever, right? And so ask them. And, and when they are part of that decision making and they feel like, oh wow, mom values me and she's actually asking me, my opinion, and right, then kids are far more likely to buy in and to follow through and do it, right? Rather than saying, like, mom's got to, leave me alone for an hour. I got to do this stuff, right? So, but if, again, if you involve them in the planning, right? It's like, oh, okay, well, we can do that, right? And if it's kind of their idea, oh, well, we're gonna draw some pictures and then we can mail them to grandma and grandpa, right? So then they've got their own, project, their own work. You can go and do your thing, and then you can come back and let's put on some music and dance around the living room and help burn off energy, or we'll go for a walk, or whatever it is. When it's stuff that they want, again, when they want to do it, right? They it gives them the incentive, and they'll do the things they need to, right?
For sure. Yeah, it was, I've done both. I've been like, give me time. And I've, sort of asked for suggestions. And I can say personally, it works way better when I ask for suggestions of what he can do. And that meant that, like, between calls today, I went and spent 20 minutes playing like a super ridiculous board game for 20 minutes, just like, and I find that using timers is super effective with my son, because he doesn't necessarily have a personal concept of what 20 minutes is like, but he knows, okay, the clock says 20 minutes. And when that time is up, then time is up and it's time to go do the next thing. I mean, I don't really think I have a particularly good concept of clock time either without looking at clocks, right? It's sort of something that I'm used to interfacing with, but younger children aren't necessarily. And so so often I suggest to clients, just use timers. They're super effective. It's super helpful to know this is the container that we're
They
creating.
are.
The container is I'm not being interrupted during this time. And yeah.
Exactly. And I mean, another thing too is you can have it like a special box where they get to put, you know, certain toys or certain things that they really like. And then the only time that they get to have those is, you know, say maybe when you've got an important phone call to make, or when you really need some time, and it's like, oh, you get to pull out your, you know, and you could name it or whatever. That's, you know, your special box, and then they can do that. But yeah, and the timer, right? Because you're right, they're not, especially when they're younger, they're not good with time. But they, you know, oh, when the timer goes, then we can, right, and have something to do.
Yeah.
You know, be listening for it, but they,
yeah, listening for it or until it goes off, you're still in sort of waiting self-entertainment mode, and that's super helpful.
Yeah.
It was a big eye-opener for me to realize that I had to help my son understand clock time, that he didn't particularly innately understand it, and I had to like explain that. That was like it's like, why won't he listen when I say just like give me an hour? It's like, well, he has no freaking clue how long an hour is.
Exactly.
You know?
Well, and like you said, we don't either unless we've got
yeah, it's like I couldn't like objectively sitting in a room tell you, oh, it's been an hour without a clock, because I mean, if I'm sitting and meditating, it's been 40 minutes by the time 2 minutes have passed, right? I'm just like, oh my God. And then other times it's like, right? Like we just don't particularly understand clock time, just understand how to look at clocks and tell time. And those are different skills. Yeah.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Very good point. Yeah.
Yeah. Beautiful. So I'm just curious, is there anything else that you feel like this burning you want to really, really share through this call?
I think the other thing is if, you know, if you're struggling a bit, like reach out for help, right? Just, I think, you know, we put a lot of pressure on ourselves, right? To be a good parent and do things. And we often, you know, don't share when we're having a rough time. You know, we've not getting a lot of sleep, or, you know, or our kids are acting up. We don't want to tell our friends that that's, you know, that's going on. You know, like I said, I mean, my son, you know, trying to get him to finish high school, and I didn't want to tell anybody. I was so ashamed of that. So, but know that it's okay. Like, I mean, you know, like we all have days where we think, you know, sometimes like, why did I want to be a parent again? Like what, right? Or where we don't like our kids. I remember the first time thinking, oh my goodness, like today I love my kid, but I don't particularly like, right? But to be able to share that with somebody, like I remember the first time it's like, oh, and you know, this other parent felt the same way. I'm like, really? It's not just me being this, you know, this horrible parent. So yeah, I think, you know, if you are struggling, if you got issues, like, you know, reach out and, you know, talk to a friend or get some support, right? Or whatever, so that you can and too, that sometimes, you know, just like having another idea, right? Like, oh, okay, I can do, well, why don't I try this today, right? And that's why, you know, I work with parents, is because I want to help them fill up their toolbox, right? So that they've got all kinds of things, because, you know, you might be kind of coasting along and like, oh, things are good. And then boom, right? Kids hit another stage and it's like, oh no, now what do I do? And so, you know, having a toolbox where it's like, okay, that one didn't work, but I'm going to pull out the next tool and go, okay, let's try this one, right? And keep at it until you get the results that you want. So, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Just imagining the reaching out for support, I think, is so crucial. I single parented for 7 years, and it was so challenging. And if I could go back and redo something, I would just be like, oh my God, woman, ask for help. Like, just ask for help, ask for help there and there and there and there and there and there and there. And,
right.
You know, I didn't really have a role model of what having a really supportive partnership looked like, because my mom was at home with us a lot, but my dad was at work. So she was single parenting too, even though, my parents were together. And a lot of people, I think, are in that situation where, technically they had two parents, but really because of so much work, they really had maybe one or no parent. They had school as a parent, or, teachers 1 in 30 as a parent. And so a lot of people just don't have role models for what it is to be a really like kind and compassionate and understanding parent. They had parents who were overdrawn and overstressed, and so finding those role models is super, super helpful. And as a single parent, like, even if you don't find a partner, find somebody that you can hang out with and co-parent together. Some of the most relaxing experiences of my single parenting were when I had either another mom that I was living with her kids, or another mom that I would weekend with, and we would do weekends together, and we'd do my house one week and her house the other week, or I would take her kids one week and she would take mine the other week. And it was just like, oh my gosh, like, this is so great to just have some support, have somebody, a lot. I think people underestimate how lonely the journey of single parenting can be, and how important it is to have somebody you can reach out to and talk to really honestly, who has better advice than, oh, just shove them on the iPad or whatever, right? Like, somebody who got like quality advice, who can really offer you support, and who understands what it is to be parenting modern children. Because a lot of our parents, it was like, give them a spoon and tell them to go play in the backyard, and that's the advice, if they're bored or annoying or whatever. And it's like, that's a little out of touch with what's happening now with kids, although still relevant. Spoons in backyards are still highly entertaining, but not nearly as stimulating as, dopamine inducing video games.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
So it's, finding the things that work though, right? Having a toolbox full of things, and that support, and taking breaks, right? Like you said, when you would take your friends' kids one weekend, and whatever, like having those. And I know right now that's tricky, right, with this social distancing. So I think a lot of parents are going to be extra stressed. So it's again, finding, okay, what can we do, what other things can we bring into this to make it work, because it's so important, right? And I mean, we, kids grow up so fast. So we, got this little window of time where, we can influence and give our kids the skills that they're going to need to become successful young adults. So, let's do the best job we can do. Right.
Yeah. And, you were talking earlier about sort of letting some of the, like, in the current COVID homeschooling, everybody's at home, in quarantine sort of experience. It's like, well, from an unschooling perspective, which is what we do mostly at home with Alex, or world schooling, when we're traveling more, it's like life is school. And so if kids have been in school doing school, well, they were learning about school at that time, and now they're at home, so now they get to like learn more about what it is to household, like how do you do stuff around the house. That might be chores. But that's what there is to learn. It's like, how do you do online shopping? How do you go grocery shopping? How do you cook and prepare food? Those are also life skills that a lot of kids leave home and go to college and are like, well, I know how to do ramen noodles.
Yeah.
That's it. That's like nutrition, right? So, which it isn't, according to my opinion, right? So this is a great opportunity to work on some more of those like soft skills, people skills, life skills type things. And self-entertainment and boredom management is for sure one of those skills. It's like, how do you handle having unscheduled programming? Welcome to life after school. And usually that's a pretty challenging experience for people. And some people don't learn how to take quiet time to themselves until they're retired in their 60s or something. So it's kind of an interesting time to have the opportunity to practice some of those skills now as younger kids.
Well, and that's so true. I think we can look at this time as a huge opportunity, right, to build that connection with our kids and to spend real quality time with them. And also it's a time for us to go within, right, and teach our kids that. And I think, sometimes I see kids and they are so busy, right? They've got school and, like all kinds of activities, and they're like constantly on the go. And for them to be able to just sit quietly, like it's like, but yet I think it's so important, because that's when we get in touch with our feelings. And I think, being able, that's another thing that I teach parents, is helping kids to handle their big emotions, and, not just stuffing them and not just keeping so busy that you don't ever, feel anything, right? Because it'll show up later. It will show up later. So being able to handle that. And, and like right now, I mean, I've been doing Facebook Lives, and I keep saying, like, it's okay to feel whatever it is that you're feeling, right? If you're sad, cry, right? And then find ways to work through it. If you're angry, then let's find ways to handle the anger in appropriate ways, but let's get it out. Don't just push it down and say, oh, you're not allowed to be angry in this house. You're, go to your room till you put a smile on your face. It's like, no, like, let's feel our feelings, get in touch. What's going on? What, am I scared? Am I, worried about something? How am I feeling? And then how can I handle it? How can I move through that? And that is another important life skill for kids, right? To be able to deal with emotions and not just stuff them, because guaranteed they'll come up at some point, right? Or turn into disease or whatever, right? So
I mean, for sure, it's like at some point you will have to deal with it, and in some ways I feel like I'm still dealing with stuff from my early childhood and teen years, and I'm in my 30s now. And it's like, some people don't start this journey until their 50s, 60s, 70s, but we all have to do it at some point. So might as well give them the tools to do it early and do it effectively, right? Based on years of research and best practices. It's amazing how things can change really. Oh, sorry. It's amazing how things can change really quickly when you have a roadmap. Oh, this is a way that works, that somebody else has been on, and these are the steps, and I'll just follow the steps. And it gives a lot of safety and a lot of acceleration of the journey. I had interrupted you, or we were talking at the same time. What was the thing that you wanted to share? Do you remember?
No, that's okay. I think we covered it. So great. I know a little bit of delay, but no, it's fine. It's fine.
Great. So if people feel really, if they're struggling with their kids right now, or they'd like help or your guidance, what's the best way for them to get a hold of you? What kind of, do you have you've got a webinar coming up tonight when we record this? And I posted about that in my
and I will be doing it again. But so my webinar is called 3 Mistakes That Parents Make That Cause Children to Disconnect, and How to Fix It Before It's Too Late. And then I'll be launching an online program, so Parenting with Purpose. And I work, one-on-one too with parents. So if, you're struggling with something, reach out, by email or calling me, and let's get things turned around, because, life is short and our kids are so precious. Like, let's get things, so that everybody is happy and you can enjoy, and have fun as a family, rather than having constant battles.
It doesn't need to be a struggle. It doesn't need to be a struggle. It can be.
It doesn't. It can be lots of fun, and right, and helping set your kids up for success, right?
Yeah.
So
I'm sure you've worked with lots of people who felt like life was a struggle with their kids, and that it would never ever change, and then they come out the other side of that experience, and they're like, oh, this is so much better now.
Right. Yeah. And it doesn't take long, and it doesn't take a whole lot. It's just some little tweaks in that consistency, and again, having support, right? Changing things, because I think a lot of times too we can fall into parenting the way that we were parented, right? And or sometimes maybe the total opposite, which maybe isn't right either, but
both of those problematic.
So, right? It's like, okay, let's find the the way that works best for our family. And yeah, fill in your toolbox up. If you've got lots of different tools, it's like, okay, so today this didn't work, but I'll just, pull out something else, and oh, yay, that worked, and okay, we can move on.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's great. And it sounds like you've got a whole collection of toolboxes, not just one toolbox, but
I do.
sort of like, okay, from all of my toolboxes, let me, which section of the bookshelf behind me should I give to this particular family for this particular issue, right? Just like, here, okay, you guys use this one.
Yeah.
See how that works for a
Exactly.
week when we come back.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh, that's really great. Well, this has been
because
Go ahead.
our kids don't come with a manual. Sorry, I was going to say, right? So it's
They don't come with a manual.
So yeah, reach out.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you so much for being a part of the podcast. It's super wonderful. And I look forward to having you back again to talk about more in depth on some of these topics. It'd be really great.
Thank you so much for having me. I just, really enjoyed it. It's been great.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Okay, we'll just say bye to the audience, and thank you so much.
Bye. Thank you.
Remember, if you love the podcast, there's so much more on our website, bulletproofmoms.com, and we would so appreciate that you subscribe, share our podcast with your friends, and give us a 5-star rating on iTunes or wherever you're viewing this, as it helps us reach more people.
Even if I've tried to do this in the past and it's been unsuccessful or I've given up and I felt like I could never change, I can completely change.
Follow your breath and you contract those intrinsic muscles. As you follow your breath and you bring that breath all the way up to that pineal gland and you hold your breath.
One of the most valuable concepts that I personally learned is that in order to reach the level of success, self-confidence, and prosperity that you want, you have to brainwash yourself. Yes, brainwash yourself. See, either way it goes, you're going to be brainwashed. But the question is, who's doing the brainwashing?
Hey guys, thank you so much for being on that journey with me. It's been a work of love to create such a journey, and I invite you to come and be part of the tribe, come be part of the experience, and get your full access pass so that you can see all of the things that are being created, experience all of the things that are being created. This is literally just a demo and just a toe in the ice of what is available in terms of audio and content that is highly programmable into your subconscious in your highest possibility. And so I thoroughly encourage you, if you are into personal development, if you watch this thing all the way to the end, there's clearly something here for you, and I want to have you as part of the tribe. So I love you. Have a beautiful day, and I'll see you on the other side in the tribe.
Sugar addiction and addiction in general, and she filled me with this beautiful knowledge and power that I always knew was inside me, but just needed, I think, a little bit of coaxing to come out. I can actually tell that there's been a big shift, and it's not just superficial. It's on a fundamental level. My thought processes are different, and that's such a beautiful gift, because I've been working really hard to get rid of this sugar addiction, as I'm sure a lot of people are, and I lost a ton of weight, and then I hit that plateau, and there's that one thing that's super hard to beat, and thanks to Elena, I think I definitely have it. This time I'll beat the addiction to sugar.
I'm on a big mission to end family trauma in this generation, and so I'm working with conscious moms to create a powerful change where we can become bulletproof, where we have no triggers, where our children cannot touch us no matter what they throw at us, so that we can be the kind of moms that we needed and the kind of moms that we want to be for this new generation, so that we can end rape, we can end trauma, we can end neglect, we can end sexual shame, we can end consumerism, we can end screen addiction, we can end all of these things by how we choose to parent and how we show up in the world. So I invite you to be here on this journey with me, and I'm looking forward to seeing you on the other side. So get your name and email in that box and join me on this journey. It's going to be an incredible 7 days where you are guided every day to understand how to create better habits, how to not give up, and how to implement the 60-second hack to rewire your brain so that you know that no matter what's happening, you'll come back to a loving place fast. I love you. I'll see you on the other side.
Present moment and your future, but also your perceptions of your past. So that you look at your past and your life and you already see all of the places where you have integrated this change and had been previously unaware of it. Thank you so much for being here today with me. And you've done great work today, not only for yourself, but for our collective consciousness. I'll see you here tomorrow. Have a beautiful, beautiful day.